Hello, mathletes. It's like an athlete for math. That was from Maya. So the second video I'm gonna have you, or the second example I'm gonna go over is when you have to solve for your exponent. That's one's a little bit trickier because there's gonna be other stuff going around. So I'm looking at my data table, and this is technically you should not be making up numbers because you should be going back to your graph to find a value, but they might already have the answers. So what I'm gonna do for my second real world type example is I actually find that this part of my graph is rather interesting because this is when they decided to shut down schools. We left on the 14th was our last day, and then a week later, our number went from almost 3,000 to almost 44,000. So something crazy happened in between those 2 days. So let's just kind of look at, different color. I need a different color. Let's see. Here we go. Here's the blue one. So looking at maybe 10,000. Okay, so we're just going to kind of round it out. So that's a number. So somewhere I want to figure out around what day did the U.S. cross the 10,000 mark. Now remember, this is real data, so you can go find out if you really want to know. But that tells me, all I know is that when we crossed the 10,000 mark, that's when people really started panicking. It's like, oh my gosh, that's a lot of people. And all I know is it happened somewhere between March 14th and March 23rd, which is why officials were kind of prompted to kind of close schools all across the country. So when we go to solve our equation, I'm looking at the value 10,000 because that's a, special number in my mind. My A value, Desmond's gave it to me, 37. My B value is 1.4. Try to tilt that so y'all can see it better. And my X value, that is the one I don't know. I want to know what was that day, around that day in March, did we cross that 10,000 or at least reach that 10,000 threshold? So I'm going to put an X. Now this one's a little bit tricky only because we need to, before we can even begin to make it that log equation, because that's what we had talked about. If we're looking for that in between exponent, we could sit all day and we could do 14.1 and 14.2 and 15.3. We don't know, and that's going to take too much time. So that's why we introduced the need for the log function. So, and we talked about switching the X and the Y. But we can't do that yet because this 37 is in the way. So the only way that works, is first you need to isolate our exponential part. Because all I need to have in order to do that, I need to have output, and then I need to have growth, exponent. So this A value is in the way. But it's okay because it's being multiplied, and since this is the inverse unit that we were in, if I want to undo multiply by 37, divide by 37. Now at this point, you can use a calculator if you want to know if it'll make it the problem easier to know what 10,000 divided by 37 is, and you can just use that single value as a decimal, as an estimated decimal. That's perfectly fine. I'm going to leave it as a fraction because I'm going to be using Desmos calculator, so it's going to tell me what that number is regardless, so I don't need to change it. So at this point, I'm now just looking at 10,000 divided by 37 is equal to 1.4 to the X value. So now I have the equation in the form that I need. I've got an output value, I've got my B value, I've got my exponent. So in this part, that's part when I would go, okay guys, so what's the inverse of log? And you guys, or exponent, you guys go log, and how do we do that? And you guys go, switch the X and the Y. And I'm like, okay, but what are we supposed to be switching? It's just me and the cat. I don't even know where he is right now. And my daughter's asleep, so she can't help us either. But she can't really talk either. So our x just comes to that side of the equation, and my big old crazy fraction essentially becomes my exponent. But remember, switching them isn't enough, because all it's going to do is make it look like another exponent. So that's why we talked about the need for the word log. When you switch those the input and the output, that is using the log function. So you must actually indicate that in your switch. So you have a new equation, x is equal to log, your base is still 1.4, and it's log 1.4 of 10,000 over 37. And the nice thing about Desmos is that we can put this directly in, and we don't have to do a whole lot of work. And I will allow the use of Desmos for this because, we're doing e-learning and distance learning. I hope it's going well for you guys. Yeah, I hope it's going well for you guys and girls. This was fun. Little YouTube tutorial. Maybe I'll be famous. Making actual math videos that make sense. That don't sound like other people who I don't think I'm allowed to say things about. Like Khan Academy videos are kind of confusing. So hopefully this is not as confusing as Khan Academy. Please look at the screencast in the PowerPoint on how to put this into Desmos if you do not remember. Maybe I'll see you on March 30th. Maybe not. Don't know.